Okay, so now we are on slide number 17. So now, at this point, we've talked about several kinds of musical form. We've talked about which ones? We've talked about strophic form. We've talked about through composed form. We've talked about theme and variations or just variations form. We've talked about binary form and we've talked about ternary form. Now, let's talk about the building blocks of form. So, we're not going to go too far into this, but just a little bit. So, let's talk a little bit again about theme. Recall that when I played that theme from the Emperor Quartet, that was a theme. So, a theme is a melodic idea in a large scale work. Let's look at another theme actually. Let's go to the next slide. Skip ahead for a second. We'll go back. But let's look at this theme from Beethoven's Symphony Number 5. So this theme, unlike the Emperor Quartet theme, this one is very short, right? It's only about 8 seconds, or maybe even less. And it goes like this. So we have... All right, so it's really short. It's less than 8 seconds, I guess. So we have theme. All right, so that's the theme for Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. So that little melodic idea is the theme, and it can be broken down, like all themes can. It can be broken down into fragments called motives. So let's break this theme down. So here's the theme again. We have... So now we can break that in half, right? And so here's the first half. Right? So that's right there. That's a fragment. That's called a motive. Okay? And then here's the second motive. Right? So first motive, second motive. All right? So this theme, we could say, has two motives, right? These motives are musical ideas that are fragments of the overall theme. Okay, so that's the idea of theme, that's the idea of motive. So now let's move on to slide number 19. Let's talk about thematic development. So thematic development is basically just an expansion of a theme achieved by varying its either melody or rhythm or harmony or some combination of any of those. So if we listen to a little bit further of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which you should do, there's a link here on slide number 19 to that. Just listening to the very opening, kind of shortly after you hear that opening theme, you're going to hear something that goes like, let's see, we have, right, I'll do that again. So, right, and then we have, that's how, something like that. Okay, so right there, we already hear some thematic development. And so how can we describe this thematic development? What is Beethoven varying to make this theme developed? So let's just take this opening motive right here, this ba 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 ba. We could describe that as 3 short notes followed by a long note, right? We could go 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3 short. So like short, 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 long, all right? So he's taking that little motive, that musical idea, and what's he doing? He's changing the rhythm because he's going, instead of short and long, he's just going all short. He's going ba 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 ba. But we can still hear that it's kind of the same melody, that we go from high to low, like ba 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 low, high, 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 low, high, 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 low. So he's changing the melody by also he's going, takes it and moves it up here, and then he moves it up here. So he's changing the melody and the rhythm for this little part. So, sorry. Okay, so that is a kind of thematic development. And then he does it again with the second motive, right? He goes, right, he goes up to there. So he basically does a similar thing with both motives. He's changing the melody and the rhythm. Therefore, he's developing this theme. So also what he's doing there, he's doing a specific kind of thematic development called a sequence. So this sequence is what happens when you take a musical idea, right, a motive, and you're restating it at a higher or lower pitch. So, right, so sequence is just a type of thematic development. So when we take this, right, he's restating it at a higher pitch and then yet again at a higher pitch, and then we take the second motive, we state it, and then we restate it higher, and then he restates it higher, like that. So that's the idea of sequence. And Beethoven does this sequence idea again and again and again, probably thousands of times in many different ways. Maybe not thousands of times, but he definitely does. He's developing those little motives in at least hundreds of different ways throughout this entire symphony. I haven't counted them, so I don't really know, but it's a lot of times. So listen to at least maybe like the first 7 minutes or so of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and listen for that idea of that kind of like 3 shorts and a long. He does it in lots of different ways throughout, right? So check that out. See if you can listen for those things, right? And at certain times he goes from C minor to C major, so he's changing the harmony. But we still hear that idea of 3 shorts and a long, but in lots of different ways. So that's the idea of theme, motive, thematic development, and sequence is a type of thematic development. All right, let's move on to slide number 20. Talk about another kind of form. So this is called call and response. And this is something we're going to return to again and again in this class. So later on in the semester. So call and response, it's a kind of form in which you have a singing leader, right, who is imitated or answered by a chorus of followers. So call and response music is really common in music of the early Western church, like early Christian church. We hear it a lot in African music. We hear it a lot in Native American music. We hear it a lot in African American music, like in spirituals and gospel music. And not only those, but we hear it in lots of other music of other cultures. And we're going to get back to this idea later in the semester. For now, though, listen to this link I have on here, Call and Response in the Maasai. And notice that you have a leader who sort of starts, a singing leader who sings a phrase, and then it's answered by a chorus of followers. So we have the caller and the responders. And then we have call and response. All right, so check that out on your own. Then let's move on to our last slide here for musical form. Last form we'll talk about is ostinato form. So ostinato form is a it's really just a short musical pattern. Maybe it's melodic, maybe it's rhythmic or harmonic, or some combination of those, and it's repeated throughout the music or a major section of the piece. We hear ostinato quite a bit in hip hop. For example, if you listen to Kendrick Lamar's Rigor Mortis, you'll hear, let's see if I can remember this little ostinato. Yeah, I think that's basically it. So we have like this little melodic fragment, which goes. We hear it played by a couple of trumpet players, and it just repeats again and again. And it goes hundreds of times. And yet, we hear other things happening around it. We hear some percussion, there's a drummer. We hear, of course, Kendrick Lamar rapping over it. And we hear also, sometimes we hear like some bass that comes in. But yet we just hear this over this little ostinato. Or it's short, right? That's it. Just over and over again. So that's ostinato. So check out Rigor Mortis for a great example of ostinato. Okay, that does it for musical form. Please, if you still have any questions or anything's confusing, email me. I'd love to help you out. All right, talk to you soon.